Howdy, howdy, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Lauren Musica Show, your favorite update in the battle for life, family, and freedom. So excited that you're hanging out with me once again. I'm Lauren Musica, attorney and human rights advocate, and I serve as president and CEO of Sidewalk Advocates for Life, the nation's largest peaceful sidewalk outreach organization. Proverbs 29:18 says, "Without a vision, the people perish." Wow. Sit with that for a second. This verse has actually been haunting me as of late. Famous business leader Dave Ramsey said on a podcast that I just listened to the other day that noting the scripture, if you don't have vision, if you don't have a solid idea of who you are, where you're going, and what you're about, you're eventually roadkill, baby. Those were his exact words. You're eventually roadkill. You'll get run over so fast by your whims and feelings and the natural ups and downs of life that you'll find yourself eventually thrust in a direction very different from maybe what you or God intended. I have long thought that what we're suffering from at times is a lack of vision, a fear of dreaming and ending up disappointment, or ending up disappointed. Because without that ability to dream and make room for God to move, we'll never have an idea of who we are really called to be and where we are called to go. And think of how that shortchanges who else God wants to serve through us. I think this is also why the scriptures call us to take every thought captive and why we're admonished to continuously renew our minds and fill it with his hope and faith. Because where we end up often starts in our thoughts. In fact, Proverbs 23:7 tells us that as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. There you go. So, what does it look like to dream big and run after a God-sized vision? I decided to ask a friend and colleague who I believe does this so well in spades to join me for this important discussion. And I've already been praying for all of you. I've been praying that whoever needs to hear this today will find this podcast. So with that, let me go ahead and introduce our special guest. As a CEO, Joe Evermore has built many successful businesses and raised tens of millions over the last 10 years. He has worked shoulder to shoulder with world-changing nonprofit leaders to unlock their potential and reach their goals. It took him 6 years to grow the national pro-life organization Save the Storks from his garage to a ministry and brand that launched over 60 mobile medical units around the country and raised millions in support of the pro-life mission, seeing thousands of lives saved. Joe then transitioned to a consultant role, building relationships and making decisions through his new consulting business, Superhero Sidekick. Looking back, Joe wishes that he had been able to find that one person who had already been there, done that, who could be by his side. So that's what he's providing now, intimate, ongoing support to leaders. In addition to his nonprofit work, Joe has created several for-profit businesses that have generated tens of millions in revenue and created jobs for several teams of people. Joe would say that his superpower is building pipelines. He loves to build catalytic systems that generate both revenue and impact. Joe has been married to his wife, Anne, for over 10 years and is proud of the family they are building. He and his sons are all about life adventures and achieving big goals. In fact, his son, Sam, and he are climbing a series of very difficult mountains. I think the son underneath Sam is actually now on that adventure too. And Sam is the youngest person ever to have climbed some of these mountains. So amazing. So, all right, let's go ahead and welcome to the program, Joe Evermore. Hello, Joe. How's it going? Great to have you.
Well, that was quite a fun introduction. That was so cool. You really covered everything. I love your concepts you were sharing, a vision too. This is going to be so fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'm serious when I say I believe this is a true crisis. In fact, I've had moments when I was putting this show together, I was thinking about it that I actually got choked up, right? I think this is like a crisis of epic proportions. I think so many believers, so many people of faith and conscience who are ready to go work for the Lord, they are so afraid of having a God-sized vision, of dreaming big. And I just admire you so much. And I've even said behind your back, I believe that you're a branding and business genius, that you're a secret genius, right? And the podcast that you had for a little bit, it was actually my favorite for a little while. So,
wow.
yeah, absolutely. So, all right. So good. Well, okay. I'm an attorney and a nerd, so I always got to lay a foundation. I want to make sure people know who you are and a little bit about your background. So I would love for you to take a moment and tell us, who is Joe Evermore and how did you come to found Save the Storks and eventually become a consultant for the pro-life, pro-family movement?
Yeah, so I was on a missions trip to New York City, and I got to see these young, passionate pro-lifers who were using a retrofitted mobile unit in New York City.
Hmm.
And it was life-changing for me. It was suddenly like, it wasn't about us like picketing and protesting. It wasn't about us like trying to even just compel somebody or convince somebody. It was when a woman came aboard this cheap mobile unit, it was like the baby persuaded the mother to carry. And for me, that was like
Hmm.
like I've never done drugs, but that was the closest things to like shooting up. I was like instantly addicted. I was like, this is life changing. I want more of
Yeah.
that. And so I got on the phone with my fiance at the time and I said, and I don't know exactly what our life's going to look like, but what if we could do what I saw today everywhere? What if we could put this in every NFL city in America? And what if we could do it with excellence? And
Hmm.
that's when the dream for Save the Storks began. And it started with a big dream, but then it was cast into a bunch of misery of the beginning of that dream, which was really hard to get that off
Yeah.
the ground. But then once it did take off, now there's over 100 mobile units now all over the country.
Yeah.
Thanks to the work
Wow.
we put in.
That's so amazing. You referenced something. I want to unpack this just a little bit more. You said that there was a time of like misery, right?
Yeah.
Like you have
Oh
this
yeah.
big God-sized vision, and I think it cratered for a little bit and then it took off. But there's a lot of story there, and I think this is instructive for so many people. Like, can you speak to that? Of like, man, I'm dreaming big and I'm doing this thing God is asking me to do, and it's falling apart, And then I like, how did you hang with that and actually see it through?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was difficult. Like, I mean, there were times where like we're like going to these events, telling people that their money is going to go and change the world with us. We haven't produced a mobile unit yet ourselves, and we're literally raising just enough money to get from one event to the next event. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, man, how does this work? Like, I'm supposed to be spending this money changing lives. And
Yeah.
yet I'm like opening the door when we get to the toll booth to see if there's change on the ground so that I could put it in the toll. We're on like a
Oh.
$3 per meal budget. And I'm like trying to figure out like how is this nonprofit going to work? The CEO is behind the booth and I'm like trying to get anybody to just partner with us. And it took me a while to kind of figure it out. And honestly, one of the things I did was I watched what other people were doing. Like we were on this tour and we would, like I said, barely raise enough money to get to the next venue. But I watched another organization, the Compassion International, just
Mm.
win every single time. And I was like,
Mm.
they seem to have it right. And so when we moved to Colorado Springs, I immediately hired the people that had built the Compassion model. And I said, I need
Mm.
to know how to do this. You got to show me what to do. And they begin to build me a playbook of how to do that. And that was really the beginning of me figuring out how to really spike my organization, and very quickly became one of the fastest growing pro-life organizations of its time. And it was a fun ride once I
Yeah.
figured it out. But I remember meeting you and we didn't have it figured out when we were like living in the back room of somebody's house down in Dallas.
Right.
And man, it was like not the best way to start your marriage, but it was
Right.
it was hard.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. No, we do go way back. Like sometimes I forget that, right? Because we soon became colleagues when you were the CEO of Save the Storks, and I had launched and was running, then running Sidewalk Advocates for Life at that point. We were taken off, and I would sometimes have a moment where I was like, hey, I remember being in like the side room of a pregnancy resource center doing a sidewalk outreach training for your like initial team of people who were going to get save the Storks off the ground, right? And then
Yeah.
to watch it spread like wildfire. And it's not, you guys did the mobile medical units and you did it well, and we even brought women over to those mobile units, and like you said, it's gold if we can get her in front of a sonogram, alongside holistic options counseling and care and support. Like, it's a game changer. Most women will choose life, right? But you also built a consulting business, Storks Consulting, right? Through
Yeah.
that. You had a coffee brand. I mean, I felt like everywhere I turned around, I was seeing the Stork brand. And I think that was so genius. And it really started, it wasn't just like, hey, this cute side ministry that we do. It really started a movement, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and really that's what a brand is. You have to think about it like the term brand is actually, if you have cattle, think of like the burning of flesh of like your insignia into into that cow. That's what we're doing when we produce a brand, except we're doing that inside somebody's brain. Like, they actually
Yeah.
begin to like remember and see that, and they get either a good or bad feeling from it because
Mm.
it's being burned into their brain. And it's like that's the mission of a brand. We want someone like thinking about it all the time. And so when we were building Storks, very quickly I realized, I want to be on everybody's t-shirt. I want to be on everybody's like bracelet, their necklace. Like, I want to be out. We made these fanny pack hats that were really funny and hot. And like, we created all of this different stuff. And really, one of the things that I learned early on, Lauren, as I kept telling my team, I said, I don't care about making money on any of this stuff. I just want to
Yeah.
give it to people. I just want them wearing it, thinking about it, and they begin to grow this deep love for our mission and what we do. And then they would partner with us and give to us on a regular basis. And that's what grew the organization. It was just really that consciousness of like continually, honoring our promises, creating really good stuff, and just getting the brand in front of people is what made it so successful, I think.
Yeah. The other thing I noticed in your story, I know it was a summary story, there's a lot of story in there, but when you were talking about going from misery into finally seeing your dream come through, you said that it's like you didn't give up. You said, I got to go figure this out. And you brought in other advisors. You brought in other people. You were unafraid to bring in other people that you had seen do it well. Can you talk about that for 1 second?
Absolutely, because that's what I do today. It's
Yeah.
like, I have a friend who has a funny story that he went to the Philippines and they gave him a car, and very quickly the car, it wouldn't start correctly, and so but he lived on a hill, so he parked on the hill, and as long as he could drive the car downhill, he could start it. And so he took it to a shop, and they said it's going to be expensive to fix it. And so he's like, I'll just keep starting it and always park it down a hill. So for his full 2-year journey, he would always park the car in the same way, like wherever he had to go. Think how inconvenient that is to always start it on a jump start. And and the new missionary came in 2 years later, and he says he was showing him the car. He's like, "Oh, this is how the car works." The guy opened the hood and fixed it in like 5 minutes.
Oh my
You know,
goodness.
and
No.
like you think
Wow.
about like how much grief that took him for those 2 years. A lot of the things I do for people is like that. It's like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, go in here and I can fix that. It's like
Right.
doing things subtly differently but right can make a huge difference. And
Yeah.
I was working with an organization this week, and like just some small changes that we're making to their fundraiser are producing a huge different ROI.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes these small things that we're after. And yeah, and if you're starting something out, it is so much like the best thing you can do is go out and get somebody who's already done it, and ask them to help you, just like you would if you were going to be an Olympian. If you want to get a gold
Mm.
medal, the first thing you and I would do, Lauren, is we would go get the best coach that we could afford, someone who's already gotten a gold medal, who can kind of
Yeah.
take us there. And
Yeah.
smart business people, that's just a no-brainer. That's a given. But when you're like in the dirt trying to build something, you don't have a lot of resources, you tend to not do that. And I
Mm.
recommend get yourself a coach, whether it's a paid coach or not, but someone who's really been there who can kind of walk you through it. And that's really what we do professionally now.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I can think back in this, so far 10-year journey as the leader of Sidewalk Advocates for Life. And I remember a handful of years ago, we ran into what potentially could have been a crisis communications issue. We didn't do anything wrong, but there was media who was coming after us, trying to slander us and say that we did all this stuff. And it was just lie upon lie. Here I am, I'm an attorney, and, they, you think coming out of law school that you have like automatic media training, but it's actually a little bit of a different animal, right? You can talk, you can make an argument, right? But when you're in the courtroom, it's kind of like building a case brick by brick. When you're in the media, it's like kind of those top line punchlines that you got to get out, right? Anyways, I just remembered having a moment in my career where I was like, I do not know how to do this. And I feel like I'm failing, right? I feel like I'm going to tank this organization. I was crying every other night. I'm like, oh my gosh, my dream's going to fall apart. This group is going to like slander us. It's going to be awful. And I prayed. I literally said, Jesus, I need help. And just a couple of weeks later, one of our leaders emails me a resume of a communications consultant. I look at this and I was like, I can't believe this. On paper, this is the person I need, right? So anyways, I gave her a call. Long story short, she ended up being with us for like 2 years. And it was because of her that I even added a communications department to Sidewalk Advocates for Life. What an idiot. Of course I need a communications department, right? But it's like that crisis led me to move my feet and to look for opportunity. And I brought in Jamie Lynn, and Jamie Lynn revolutionized some aspects of our ministry. And it didn't come from Lauren Musica. It actually came from Lauren not knowing what to do, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so now I can look back and see the fruit of so much of her work as well. And so, and they actually say that that's why Donald Trump is, at least by some measure, one of the greatest presidents we've ever had. Is it's not because he has all the answers, it's because of who he surrounds himself with, right? Isn't that true?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And now
So
you're
good.
one of those people. Now you're the expert on it too. So
Yeah,
you have a
teaching
lot
other
of
people what I did wrong, right? Dave Ramsey says
yeah.
I'm standing on a pile of my failures. It's just that I got back up and I said, nope, I'm going to figure this out. This is not going to defeat me, right? And I think that's so important. It's so funny. I'm looking at our outline. I'm already ready to skip around. So let me ask you this. What are some of the mistakes that you see ministries and organizations making when it comes to building their brand and service in the movement? What do you see as the biggest challenges and crises that we need to overcome to become more effective?
Well, I think a lot of when we're talking about nonprofit organizations, a lot of them, are very focused on their mission and their ministry and all that. But then when it comes to really their donors, they don't build like real products. They don't build real
Mm.
things for their donors to partner with. And as you and I have had in conversation before, it feels a lot of times to donors like they're just buying a certain amount of sand to dump in a river and to get a bridge across. And it feels to them as they watch that sand go into the water like they just did nothing. It's like doesn't
Mm.
they don't really connect to it like they should. And when we do it right, what you find is people get really excited and they actually begin to level up with you in their partnership. They actually
Yeah.
want to not just give you some of their money. I've seen people give you all of their money, and in like one of my mission when I'm working on fundraising for an organization is not to just get a little bit of some money, a person's money. My mission is to develop a relationship where they put me in their will. Like that's the
Mm.
actual mission. Okay. And so to do that, I've got to really serve them well. I've got to make sure that
Yeah.
they are the hero of the story that I'm writing and that they can really get in there and feel like they're changing the world. And when that happens, people level up. And it's
Yeah.
so often we just expect donors to just give and a lot of organizations barely even give them a phone call. They barely even
Mm.
they like maybe send them a handwritten note. They send them some spam. But are they really developing that donor where that donor feels like they're an integral part of the mission, or not? Like if
Yeah.
they are, then that donor is going to level up and this organization is going to grow like Storks did, like you are, but if you don't, they're always just kind of like it's always like it feels like you're in collection with somebody, always trying to get them to get back on.
Yeah.
If you don't
Yeah.
build it in this way.
It's so important. if you think about it, all the people that you and I work with on our respective teams, like they're part of our family, they're part of the mission. Why not our donors who are literally making our work possible? If they don't give, I wouldn't be here right now, right? These
Right.
people are part of our family. They deserve a seat at the table. And so, are we bringing them into this identity, this brand, but even more that the mission that God has given us, and helping them to see that they're a part of it. That's what I hear you saying, right? That this
Yeah.
is so intrinsic to being able to grow and move forward in the mission that God has given us. That's so good. What about branding stuff? Sometimes you were alluding to this earlier. Sometimes when we hear brand, we kind of cringe. We think, oh, it's, we're doing something just for the sake of the brand. We just want to be popular. We just, want to throw something on a t-shirt or whatever, but it's so much more than that. Like, why is brand important? And, what do you see as the biggest challenge that ministries are having with that?
Well, I think it's really important to understand really what a brand is fully. Like in a lot of
Mm,
organizations, because like a lot of people will, get involved in a branding project, they'll bring me into it, and they're thinking that I'm coming to work on their logo. Like
hmm.
that's what they're thinking. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's important. It's very important. But your brand is so much more than that. That's actually when you think of it, like when you see an iceberg out in the water, you see a small amount of it. The big amount of it is under the water.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that makes the brand great or not. I mean, a great brand is a company where people literally come and they rip the roof off the building to get to it. I mean, that's the story of Christ, right? When he's like they're tearing the roof off the building to get to him. He had a good brand, right? So does the Apple Store. It's like people line up around the building to get
Hmm.
in when that new product comes out. Why do they do that? Well, it's because they have fulfilled so many promises. And the
Hmm.
elements of the brand that are really, really important are the story of the brand, the vision
Yeah.
of that brand, the mission of that brand. Those things build a foundation that then begin to create actual core values. And it's out of that core values that there becomes a strategic plan of like how we're going to accomplish this great vision that our leaders have, And it's like within that, they build a company culture. And then they build a full subculture outside of that. The subculture is all the people wrapped around the Apple Store. It's the
Hmm.
people that are so crazy about, X or, or Instagram. It's like people love these things because they have fulfilled promises because there's a development of those other things. And it's like
Yeah.
we have to develop those as importantly as we do our logo and our name and like our tagline. Those are important things. Our rally cry, those are important things. But it's that foundation that makes you great. And that's what separates one company from another. It's not their logo. It's these other things.
Right, right. Yeah, and I know you would agree with me on this. We're not saying logos aren't important. We're just saying brand is so much more than that. It's an experience. It's what my favorite definition of brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
right. I mean,
I love that. Yeah. It's
it's like
exactly
when
what it
you
is.
right, and you open, I'm a Dr. Pepper fan. I open Dr. Pepper. If I get Coke, I'm gonna be mad, right? Like I want to make sure that I get my Dr. Pepper, right? And Dr. Pepper's consistent. It's delicious. It's, I'm pretty sure the Lord made it himself, like the idea is here, like, who are you out in the public square, right? And are you consistent in that? I know even when we were determining colors for Sidewalk Advocates for Life, I didn't want red and black and, angry and ugly and death, right? I wanted life. And so I chose green and blue. And then I wanted yellow for hope, right? And I still remember one of our video vendors going to our website and him going, wow, I go to your website and I see peace. I see hope, right? And I'm like, oh, you got it. That's
Yep.
exactly what we were trying to convey, right? And then people's experience with us as they sign on to our program, it's like, okay, they serve me well. These core values that they have on their website of servant leadership and excellence. And there was actually a donor that I visited with 2 weeks ago, and I sat down. I didn't even say anything. She goes, I just have to say right off the bat, everything coming out from your organization is so clear and clean and professional. You would think you're this, multi-billion-dollar international nonprofit or something, right? And here you are, kind of small to medium sized and producing incredible results. But she said, I just had to compliment you on that. And I was like, oh, Carolyn, that's like the best compliment you could have given me, right? So It's so good. It
Yeah.
matters.
And a lot of people don't give it that attention. There's a lot of really cluttered logos and like just it just looks like a trash pile. Like who built this thing? Like
Yeah.
like what was this 1997? Like
Yeah.
I see that a lot, and it's for me. It's like I don't want to be a part of that. Like
Yeah.
people want to be a part of something that looks great, feels great. It gives them that sense of, okay, these people understand and they connect with me, and
Yes.
ultimately
Yes.
that's when someone puts on your t-shirt, it's like they're identifying with your brand and it's kind of becoming like their brand. That's the mission. That's when you
Mm.
begin to build what you
Oof.
call a lifestyle brand. That's when somebody says like, this is actually a part of my way of life. And it's like
Yeah.
that's like kind of the ultimate of building like that brand. It's like when your followers begin kind of building it and even rebuilding it with you.
Yeah, yeah. This is so important too for those of us who go to the sidewalk and reach out at abortion facilities. Like this is why we, have a professional safety reflector vest.
Oh,
Our literature is not stuck back
love
in
it.
the 80s and 90s. We want to connect with the millennial and the Gen Z woman because I'll tell you, Planned Parenthood has invested millions of dollars into their branding and marketing. They're making sure they're relevant, that they're connecting with the woman who's facing an unexpected pregnancy. It's like, what are we doing to counter that effectively? And like I always say, God loves a good David and Goliath battle, right? We steal their business all the time. But if we go out there with and again, I've made a few of these in my day. I'm not meaning to be ugly on these, but the homemade signs that look like ransom notes, right? Or like we're in our basketball shorts and our ratty t-shirt, we're handing out information. I can help you, right? Is she going to believe us? It's like, our brand is what we're putting out into the world,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so can we dress in such a way, talk in such a way, present ourselves in such a way? I mean, it's just like when you're dating somebody. I this is a true story. I have a friend of mine. This is so fun to share. I have a friend of mine started talking to this guy online, this kind of beautiful, kind of Christian, dating site, right? They decide they're going to go ahead and have a video call. And, he's dressed pretty decently from the waist up, a nice t-shirt. She was a little bit like, but do you know what the deal breaker was? It was when he had to go into the next room and tell his dog to be quiet. He was barking in the back room, right? And he had on plaid pajama
Ah,
pants. And she's literally said, she was like, at that moment, I was like, can this man not dress up for me just a little bit,
ah.
And I was like, fair, right? I mean, so, anyways, we don't want to be the plaid pajama pants out on the sidewalk or in the pro life, pro family movement. We're competing. I mean, the darkness has a brand and it is deceptive. And many times it's beautiful and it comes as the best thing that we've ever seen. And so, are we willing to do a little bit of homework and present ourselves in such a way that exudes trust and peace and hope and joy, which is what she's really after when she's headed
Well,
into an abortion facility,
well,
right?
in a way, your friend, when he saw the plaid pajama pants, she began to see below the waterline, of
Ooh,
of the iceberg. You begin to see that, like, oh, it's like this is halfway. This is like I'm going to do just
mm,
as much as I need to. Like, there's a lot
yeah.
said in what they saw, and it's like those are the kind of things that, and they happen fast. It's like, I don't know if you remember the Samsung Galaxy phone. Like you remember, like
Mm.
every time you would get on an airplane at one point. Do you remember this when they were like, if anybody has a Samsung Galaxy phone, you cannot board this plane. Do you remember that? Like
It would like explode or
yeah,
something,
that
right?
was the fear. Like that literally, like it's estimated that just the cost to the brand, not all the products they had to recall and all the costs of all that, it was $215 billion. Just the devastation of that. And that's when really like they were picking up some speed on the iPhone and it just crushed them. Because I mean, every
Golly.
plane on the northern hemisphere was getting that message as you're boarding the
Yeah.
plane. Like if you have one of these phones, it might explode. Like done. Like plaid pajama pants, done.
Right. You just destroyed the brand, right? You got
Done.
some years to kind of recalibrate here and prove yourself once again in the space. Oh my gosh. It matters. It just does.
In
And
one second, you can destroy your brand by breaking your
yeah.
promises. It's like
Yeah.
1 second. Like if you, like you said, like if you get one, you get out a beautiful Coca-Cola and you get a mouthful of hair one time, and it will be over. You will be like, you know what? I think I'm gonna pick something else. I'm gonna try Sprite. From now on.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, and for those of you who may be a generation or two ahead of us, and you're like, I don't know what's relevant, I don't know what's going to connect with women, or men or whatever at this generation. This is why we have children and grandchildren and friends, and we can ask questions, right? Again, we bring in advisors. You can hire Joe, right? They've got some great expertise in this area, and it's worth talking to somebody. I mean, our first logo, it was a mother, like kind of with a child in the air, right? And our comms consultant, Jamie Lynn, that I talked about earlier, she was like, I see Dirty Dancing, the movie from, what is it, the 80s, early 90s or something like that. And I was like, oh no. And like someone else at the table, one of our other team members, she's like, I can't unsee that now, And we were like, we got to change this fast. And so we ended up going with this beautiful, like, it's like a location balloon, on location, saving lives, ending abortion. And I will say we redeemed ourselves so much that one of my friends, Karen Garnett, used to be a VP over at Heroic Media. She walked into her CEO's office. She threw down our logo on his desk. She goes, "This is genius. Look at this, on location," right? And so anyways, this brand kind of evoked something, this logo evoked something very different than what we had before. And so I will tell you, take it from somebody who's done it wrong before. It got us by. People thought it was cute for years until Jamie Lynn completely like crushed it for us. But hey, it was a really good lesson for me to make sure to get some other voices at the table, right? So important. Yeah. Let me ask you this, Joe. The scriptures say, again, without a vision, the people perish. And again, I believe this is just a crisis of epic proportions here in the kingdom. But why is it essential that we dream big? And why do you believe that God actually freely invites us to do so? What is the importance of casting a vision?
Well, I think of the story like where, I don't remember the exact details of the story, but remember how Jesus tells the story about the master, and he leaves and he gives each guy a certain amount of talents. First guy, 3 to 6. Second guy, it was like 2 to 4. The last guy, what did he do? He took the money. He didn't spend it on crack cocaine or anything else. He put it in the bank. He basically, this is the bank of me growing up where you get less than 1% interest. I mean, like 0.1% interest, like he got no interest on the money. And when the master comes back, the first guy, he says, well done. For you, I'm going to give you 10 cities in the new world, and then the second guy is like, well done. I'm going to give you 5 cities in the new world. And then the third guy, I'm going to send you to hell where there's like the gnashing of teeth, and it's like, when I first read that, I was like, for what? Like, he didn't steal the money. He came back with the money.
He didn't do anything wrong, per se, right?
But what did he do? What did he do? He didn't risk. And what the master did was he took the money from the guy who had won, who had saved it in the bank, and he gave it to the guy who risked it the biggest. And it's like, if you want to take 3 bags of gold and turn it into 6 bags of gold, you have to risk that money. And it's like, that's what God wants us to do. Because when we don't risk, we're telling the world that God's heart isn't kind toward us. We're telling the world that God is not there for us. And it's like, everything in the Bible is like, it's like, hey, Peter, come out here on the water, out of the boat. I know you're scared to death already. Come out here on the boat, or out of the boat. Like, that is the call of our faith. Like, we are supposed to be the people that are having a big vision, going for it big, and trying impossible things. I mean, those are the elements of like the miraculous aspects of our faith. And when we see people just kind of like cheaply or kind of don't make big moves, like, to me, I'm like, yeah, that's a person who really lacks faith. I want people that like embody faith, and so I want to be around people that are making big moves, that have big vision. And so that's my take on.
I love it. Joe, what would you say to somebody, last couple questions here. What would you say to somebody who is just in a valley right now. Like they've tried a bunch of things. They're just so discouraged in their ministry, maybe in life, right? They're like, "Oh, Joe, I have this vision. It crashed." What would you tell them to do at this moment to kind of move through that and come out the other side?
Well, the first thing I'd tell him is mine crashed too, like
Hmm.
10 times, like the plane that came out of the air and crashed into the ground. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
there was times where it was like bad. I've made and lost millions of dollars. Like,
Hmm.
I know what that's like. I know how hard that is, and it's usually people that have crashed small, in my opinion, that are really like, maybe I should give up on this. Like, no, no,
Hmm.
no, no. This is part of the journey. Like, you don't
Mhm.
you don't just succeed. You fail and you fail and you fail, and then you figure it out, and then you win. And it's like it's that that gets you there. It's not
Yeah.
this is the best stuff. Like when you lose money, when you fail, you are going to grow the most. But however, that's only true when we don't blame others. When we look
Ooh.
inwardly and we say, what did I do that contributed to this? What did I do to make this whole thing fall apart? Um, that's when we really change. And there was a time like with another business I had where I had some business partners that really made a bunch of bad decisions and really kind of crashed the thing. And in my
Yeah.
heart, I was like blaming them on everything. And I told that one of my mentors that, and my mentor said, Joe, you're an idiot. Like you set up these contracts with these people. You decided to work with them. You were like, you gave them full control of the business, and then they crashed it. I blame you as much as them. And I was like,
Wow.
that's a really good point. And I began to look inwardly and say, like, there were things that I contributed to that crash. But if I would have just said it was their fault and blamed them, I wouldn't have grown in those areas. I would have crashed the next plane with my next set of business partners by like letting them have full control of it and not giving any oversight and things like that that I had done wrong.
Yeah.
On the next one, I did it right. But
Mm.
it's only because I looked inwardly. It's only because I had that mentor that's like, Joe, stop blaming them and look at how dumb you are. And then I
Yeah.
was like, oh yeah, I am dumb. Like those were colossal mistakes of mine that allowed
Yeah.
me to work with these clowns. Like, and that's
So what I
that's
hear you saying is like taking radical ownership over your role in everything, right? And learning,
yeah.
learning and knowing that it's, I think sometimes we're a fast food culture, right? Like I order the 20 nugget meal and I'm going to get that. I'm going to drive through and get it like that, right? But quite often we forget that the journey is part of the gift, right?
Yeah.
That God is doing something, he's growing something in us that we could otherwise never get if we're not willing to take that journey. So many people
This is
stop
true in our
short.
marriage too. It's
Yeah.
it's like in everything this is true. We got to look inwardly. And when it comes to money, business, fundraising, organizations, it's like there's two rules of money. Rule number one is you grow the most when you lose the most money. Rule number two is that rule number one only applies when we don't blame others. And so if you can remember those
Mm.
two rules, you will grow, you will take what you just lost and grow and win big. I promise you, you will. Because
Yeah.
that's been my path. I haven't won on the first swing, like ever. Like
Yeah.
I got lots of stories that cover the battlefield. Um,
Yeah. Absolutely. Like I said, my one of my favorites, Dave Ramsey, big business leader. He's known as the deck guy, right? And then he went into business. He's got a multi-million-dollar business. And he says that the difference between him and the other guy is some guy is buried under his failures and he's standing on top of it, right? He just learned every step of the way what not to do. And that's true for me too. I think sometimes we're so tempted to look at the highlight reel. We look from the outside looking in. Lauren makes it, I've had people say this to me, Lauren, you make it look so easy. I'm like, well, I'm just on Facebook every other day telling you how I messed up again. Like it's just, we're learning. We're like, no, this is too important. The why is too important to give up, right?
yeah.
What are
The,
we
the,
fighting for?
the
Yeah.
cheat code to a series of failures is to have a coach. That's the cheat code. It's like
Yeah.
if you have a coach, they're going to say, "Whoa, whoa, 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 back." And and
I did
and
that.
usually when I coach people and when I get coached, they still do the thing you don't want them to do. Like
Yeah.
they still go off, but they don't go off as far. They like start going off and they feel it. They feel the pain of what's
Mm,
coming. And they're like, yeah, I got this coach who's been in my ear. I can get it back on. You know, it's like
yeah.
that. And that's usually how it is when I coach my kids. It's like, I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And then they don't crash as hard as they would have had I not been there. But they
Yeah.
still kind of like bump off the road a little bit and they come back on. And it's that is the cheat code. If you want to move fast, you want to grow fast, you want to like succeed more than you fail, get a
Yeah.
coach, get a mentor.
Get that wise council of advisors around you. Absolutely. Joe, this has been amazing. We need to have you back on soon. We got to do a part 2 of this show for
Love
sure.
it.
There's so much more wealth here to unpack. Let's go ahead and end with this. You and your sons climb mountains. You've had people threaten to turn you into like, child protective services
Yeah.
because they're scaling these ginormous mountains, right? I have a
Right.
fear of heights, so I look at some of the pictures of you guys like, sleeping on the side of a mountain and I'm like, I would just die right there, that I can't do that. But what I love is you have set these huge goals and you're teaching your sons things. So like, what do you want to share with the world about why that process means a lot to your family and why that's important?
So not every family is like this, nor should it be. But our family is, first of all, a very goal-oriented family. And one of the ways we roll with that is we have one goal every year for every person in our family. And
Wow.
we start that when our kids turn 5. That's like that where we think is like our child's first memories, like that they can kind of pull back from. And what we want to do is we want to win big with them and then celebrate that. Most
Mhm.
grown-ups that I know who think their birthday is the biggest deal in the world are people that I don't respect that much. It's like,
Mhm.
it's like that. And for my kids, it's like we do celebrate their birthday, but we really want to celebrate what they earn, what they do.
Mm.
And so our goals have 3 rules. One is that we try to pick things that are so big and so hard that you have to train for them a little bit every day.
Hmm.
Secondly, we try to pick things that can go on our walls. You can see I've got photos over here. Like we want to pick remarkable summits that we can forever remember. And so since we plan to wait way into the future, we pick ideal summits. So, I mean, for instance, that was El Capitan with Sam when he was 8, and so he's the youngest person still to have ever climbed it. Which is a big deal. I mean, that's an
That's a
unheard of thing. It
big
took us
mountain.
5 days of hanging from our anchors or our fingers. And then rule
Oh.
number 3 is you can't die. So like, and so we got 3 rules. We like to say we always it's so important that we put safety third. But we want things to be super dialed. We want the right team, the right people, the right, plan, the right weather, and everything lines up. We go for the mountains that we're climbing with our kids. And
Mm.
one year, Sam's was to actually give like a talk in front of 100 people. So
Hmm.
we've done a lot of mountains, but then that one was like literally the hardest one for him of everything
Mm.
we've done.
Yeah.
And so it's not always mountains, but as I'm developing these boys, we have this kind of goal oriented, plan.
That's so good. All right. 30 seconds. You got to encourage somebody who's in the trenches right now to dream big, to go for it. What would you tell them?
Yeah, well, first of all, like I said earlier, like it's failure is the road to there. So like if it feels like
Biggest
you're
teacher.
failing, it feels like you're scratching the earth, like take a breath, you're going to be okay. Like this is what you signed up for. You
Mhm.
often set off like for the sunset and then it ends up being really hard. That's always how it is. It's always about 3 times as hard. It always costs about 3 times as much as you thought. And so
Mm.
like just hang in there. Um, I don't. Likely it's not time to give up yet, even though you feel like it. Keep pushing
Mm.
forward. And then the other thing, as I say, I'd like to say is you need to get a coach. You need to get somebody who's
Yeah.
already gotten the gold medal, who can kind of come around you and say, I can help map this out for you. I can show you the path to get there. Um,
Yeah.
that's a game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. This is why we have pastors and priests and coaches. And, the Lord has given us so many resources out there. Let's use them. Let's be unafraid. And that doesn't speak to, if anything, that speaks to our wisdom. That actually speaks to our integrity, right? That we're unafraid to recognize the answer is not always with us, right? We have an opportunity to learn and bring other people in. So, all right, people want to get a hold of you. What's the website?
Superherosidekick.com. Also, if you just email me at joe@superherosidekick.com, I'll send you a little brand guide, it's like a brand PDF that I think will help you think about your branded logo. And we would love to just, even just talk with you for the first time. It'd be just free, and see if we can help you if you need a hand on something.
That's awesome. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for the discussion, Joe. This has been so much fun. Definitely have to have you back on. Thanks again for being with us.
Loved it.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Closing thought. Dream big. We see it on posters, memes, Instagram posts, a little kitschy, right? It sounds good. It sounds fun. But let me just be real for a second. What if you and I were unafraid to get alone with God, to spend some time with him and ask him, the great adventurer, right, to set a vision for our lives, to really ask him what he wants to do through us, what he wants to do to change the world. So I'm going to challenge us, myself included, since we're still at the top of the year. If you haven't already, I want to invite you to grab a blank notebook or at least a few sheets of paper, sit somewhere quiet, grab your favorite beverage, and really pray and ask God, what do you want for my life? What do you see for my life? And what do you want to do through me this year? Then I want you to just get quiet. It's so hard to do this, right? We want to talk. We want to fill in the blanks. I'm an attorney. I always want to yap and fill in the quiet. I have to force myself to just slow down and just listen. Then I want you to write it down. What do you hear? Then I want you to take it seriously and begin reverse engineering. What are just some easy steps towards that goal, towards what God is asking you to do? How can you accomplish that soon, even slowly, step by step? How can you, again, just take even one step in the right direction? Maybe it's really simple what God is asking you to do. Maybe there's certain virtues that come to mind that he wants to develop in you. Maybe he is inviting you to do that so that you can thwart a debilitating sin that's stunning your growth, right? Maybe he wants you in a special new ministry or job that's been tugging at your heart for a long time. Maybe he wants you to write a book, climb a mountain, or start that nonprofit. And maybe he just wants you to sit with him and really allow him to heal you. Whatever it is, I invite you to start here. Go into prayer, ask, listen, and act. And I guarantee you that if you do that and be who you are called to be by him, as St. Catherine of Siena says, you will set the world ablaze. And how much does God desire to do that through us, right? What is it said? That the glory of man is man fully alive. What are we limiting because we're overthinking and getting in his way when he may want to do the miraculous through us? Really something to think about, especially as we roll into 2025. All right. Well, special thanks to Joe once again for being with me, and thanks to all of you for joining me for another episode of the Laura Musica Show. We're going to be back here next Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central on Facebook Live, YouTube, or wherever you get podcasts. Thanks so much, everybody.